All right. The next thing that we're going to do now that we have our VPC up is we're going to go ahead and create some subnets. I think a picture is very helpful, so I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the docs about subnet cider blocks. Okay, because when I was creating my subnets and practicing before this video, I wasn't really sure what to put for the subnet cider blocks. Okay, so this documentation was really helpful, and I'll make sure it's linked in this lesson. But I like the picture especially because it kind of shows you. So this is our VPC, right? And you can see this box and it's a solid green border. Nothing can go in and nothing can go out unless you let it, okay? And when I say unless you let it, I mean you have to create a resource on AWS that does that. And there's lots of them and we're going to go through them, okay? But just think that is your cloud. It's yours only. No one can get in. No one can get out, okay? Then within this VPC, what we're going to do is we're going to create subnets, okay? So subnets are going to divide the IP addresses that we have available. So we have 256 IP addresses in the entire VPC, all right? So we're going to break that into two subnets, right? Each supporting 128 IP addresses, right? So one of them is going to have this range here, 10.0.0.0/25, which is going to be this range of IP addresses. And the other one's going to be 10.0.0.128/25, which is going to support these 128 IP addresses, okay? Why do we have two different subnets? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to make a private subnet and a public subnet. So anything within the public subnet, we are going to set up that it can connect to the public internet. And we're going to use an internet gateway to do that. For the private subnet, all right, let's just say subnet A is our private subnet. Nothing will be allowed to get in and out, all right? And we're going to have to be kind of sneaky and tricky with how we access the internet from within the subnet, all right? And access the application within the subnet from the internet. All right, because we're keeping it private and locked down because we don't want other people, bad actors, to be able to communicate with our application directly. Okay. This will make more sense as we go. So if it's a little bit foggy, that's okay. The best thing to remember right now is that we made ourselves a private cloud. All right. And now we're breaking that cloud into two subnets with different IP addresses. So that way we can kind of have some IP addresses that are public and some that are private. All right, so to create that, we're going to go to our subnets page. You'll see that we already have 6 subnets. That's just in our default VPC. You can filter your VPC. So I'm going to filter so that way I'm looking only at my deploy in public VPC. And then I'm going to click Create Subnet. All right. The first thing you do is select the VPC, which is going to be our deploy in public VPC. All right, you can see that this is our cider block associated with that VPC, and then we need to name it. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to say deploy on public, and then I'm going to say public subnet. All right, availability zone, I'm going to click US East 1A. Now, we are creating a VPC that is just in one region. All right. So the subnet and both of our subnets will be in the same region. All right. If you have like a super like scaling app, lots of users, if you want to make sure you have no downtime or as little downtime as possible, you're going to want to have multiple availability zones because if one availability zone crashes, you want traffic to go to the other. But for this assignment, I want to just keep it simple. We're creating this all manually. I don't want to have a million subnets. So we're just going to do 2 subnets and we're going to do them in the same availability zone. Okay. So this is the cider block for the VPC. So then we need to select what cider block do we want for this specific subnet. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy the ones that are advised to us by AWS to split them just in half. Okay, so you can see that it's popping up. This is going to equate to 128 IP addresses. An IP address, for example, when we deploy our application, we'll use an EC2 instance. That's an IP address. Okay, so you can see we don't need that many for such a small application and small purposes as this assignment. All right, keeping the name as the only tag is fine. We're going to add another subnet. This is going to be subnet 2. We're going to call it deploy in public private subnet. And we'll select the same availability zone because it doesn't matter for our purposes since we're not actually going to have users. And then we'll select the other CIDR block that's going to be the other 128 IP addresses in that VPC. Okay? And then we can create subnet. Now, before I click create subnet, I want to point out that we didn't actually, the only thing that is saying that this is private or this is public is the name, okay? That's not actually doing anything. This was something that was really confusing to me when I first started learning about this, was like, why are people naming it public or private? But like, where am I actually clicking public or private? They're both private right now until we set up gateways and until we make them not and change things up, okay? You're creating the subnet and then you have to add resources onto your setup to make internet traffic go in or out, okay? So anywho, but having the subnet name, public or private, will help you with associating all of those resources and will help you when you're deploying your application. So we're going to create our subnet, and you can see it's creating both, okay? All right, so that is going to be how you create a subnet, in our case, a public subnet and a private subnet, but they're not really public. Neither of them are public at this point. They're both private. So right now, this is the picture that we have. We have our VPC, and then within it, we have two subnets, and they're both locked down, even though we're saying one is public. But next, we'll start looking into how to make one of them actually public. See you in the next video.